The same thing here. There's a correlation. What's the correlation here? بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. The first most important is the maghfirah. Everything else comes. You came, and as you came, you will leave. Notice what the poet says. The poet says this. He says, اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله. أنت الذي ولدتك أمك باكيا. He's talking to the human being. He says, you are the one who your mother gave you birth, you were crying. أنت الذي ولدتك أمك باكيا والناس حولك يضحكون سرورا. And the people around you are laughing. You are crying and they're laughing. When you're born, you cry, they laugh. Smile, everybody's having a feast while you're crying. فَعْمُدْ إِلَىٰ عَمَلٍ تَكُنْ. Then go, rush to a deed. تَكُنْ. So you will be فِي يَوْمِ مَوْتِكَ ضَاحِكًا مَسْرُورًا. So you will be in a day when you die and they're crying, you are laughing. You will be born crying and people laughing. Use this time so when you die you will be laughing while they are crying. Notice? And therefore Bilal, and the Sahabi al-Azim Radwanullahi ta'ala alayhi, Bilal al-Habashi. I always talk about Bilal and others, but specifically because these people, Bilal wa Ammar, those were the people, the poor among the Sahaba, and from Africa, East Africa, that area, very dark people, dark, skinny, very poor. People didn't pay attention to them much. But notice Islam, subhanallah, made them so magnificent, and they became the leaders of Islam. So that the Prophet ﷺ tells Ammar that Al-Jannah, not Ammar is yearning to Jannah, he is, but Al-Jannah tashtaqu ila Ammar. Al-Jannah is yearning towards Ammar, is waiting for Ammar, not Ammar waiting for Jannah. Al-Jannah is waiting for Ammar Radwanullahi alayhi. So was Bilal. And therefore when Bilal al-Habashi Radwanullahi ta'ala alayhi, when he was on his deathbed and his wife was crying, what was he doing? He was smiling. He said, this is the day I've been waiting for my whole life. Tomorrow, غَدًا أَلْقَى الْأَحِبَّةِ مُحَمَّدًا وَحِزْبًا. Tomorrow I will be with Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Okay. كانوا إذا قيل لهم لا إله إلا الله يستكبرون. If you tell them La ilaha illallah yastakbirun. Al-Islam came to tell us there's a dialogue. Things always between him. Since we are all a creation, there has to be dialogue amongst creation. And therefore you see Al-Islam and Al-Quran ordering and commanding dialogue. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ya Nuh qad jadaltana fa aktharta jidalana. O Nuh, they're talking to Nuh, the people of Nuh. They said, you are debating us too much. We can't, you know. And he tells the Prophet ﷺ the same word, jidal. وَجَادِلْهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. Debate them and dialogue with them. Because life is about a dialogue. But what happens when there is no dialogue? Then we move into the era of exchanging what? Exchanging accusations, exchanging labels, slandering others. Very simple. And that's where Islam comes from. Islam distinguishes between the power of logic and the logic of power. Islam comes with the power of logic, not the logic of power. Because the logic of power can never supersede the power of logic. What does that mean? I have the microphone, I can say whatever I want. Maybe other people have different ideas, but they can't, because the logic of power is I have this speaking power and you don't. Therefore I can tell you that Islam, for example, those who say Islam is not logical. Why? They have the microphones. Islam is not logical. Sure. Is that what they say? Okay. What else? Islam came with violence. What else? All these things. This is not the first time, nor will it be the last time. We are not here to refute anybody, because Islam is much higher than refutation of any creation. No, but we're here to discuss, to see within ourselves what the logic and how Islam came, was revealed, and how the Prophet ﷺ then spread this da'wah in his circumstance. And therefore you'll see those who are not willing to dialogue openly, what will they do? They will curse you and they will assign you labels and names. No other way. The only way I can do it if I strip you, if I assign you names. This is the entire principle of violence. You all know violence. When people say, okay, this is violence, what they do is basically they assign you a name. Let's say you're evil. And once I give you that name, that justifies me stripping you of every right you have. Now you're evil. So I gotta get you before you get me. Notice? There's no dialogue. Verses in Islam says, wait a minute, we need to construct a dialogue among everybody. All human beings should have a dialogue, and then we should open everything. Why do we say this? So we don't say they say this, and we don't say they say that. The war of rumors and the war of, let's say, media was started in Al-Quran, as the Quran says, started when the Prophet ﷺ initiated his da'wah. The war of media. What happened? First of all, كانوا إذا قيل لهم لا إله إلا الله يستكبرون. النبي الأعظم صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم, he goes and he tells them, say La ilaha illallah. And he tells them why La ilaha illallah is so important. Why this, why that. What do? يستكبرون. They reject. But not only do they reject in the sense of rejecting a fact, but they reject by downgrading the message and the messenger صلى الله عليه وآله. How come? وَيَقُولُونَ أَإِنَّا لَتَارِكُوا آلِهَتِنَا لِشَاعِرٍ مَجْنُونَ. Should we leave, abandon our gods to a crazy or to an insane poet? Why did they say all these things? Why did they say an insane poet? There's few things, of course. First of all, النبي الأعظم صلى الله عليه وسلم أوتي مجامع الكلم. He was a very eloquent speaker. Speaking, and his speech always made sense. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. Nobody spoke better than him. And they couldn't combat his speaking because it is not only from him. They didn't realize ما هو إن هو إلا وحي يوحى. Wahi. He's making it up. So therefore they couldn't combat this. What do they do to slander his effectivity and his eloquency and his beautiful speech? They say he's a poet. Why? Because poets, they're people who have this sensitivity and this capacity to make up good, you always hear poets, they make up good lines, and they're effective and they're very eloquent. But when I say you're a poet, then I'm stripping you away from a very important thing, the knowledge, which is the Prophet ﷺ has, and above that, of course, the prophecy of the Prophet ﷺ. So they say he's a poet. But they don't really mean any poet, because poetry is also good. And the kuffar of Quraysh, the media of Quraysh at that time, they didn't want to give the Prophet ﷺ even anything that's good. They didn't mean the poet that is good. They meant actually, because there's two kinds of poets. There's a poet that always stands for the truth, and there's other poets that, you give them $10 and they give you a qasida in you. You just go back 300 years to 200 years. All these sultans and amirs, and until today, they come, you give them money, and they now all of a sudden you have a book of qasaid. Madh and all this thing, mashallah. And they make you almost like the one who made Abdul Nasir. He says, ما شئت لا ما شاءت الأقدار فاحكم فأنت الواحد القهار. Not is what you want. He told Abdul Nasir of the man of Egypt. He says, is what you want, not what the qadar wants. So you rule, whatever you rule will go. This is how sometimes things go this far. Because what? People usually, those people, abid dunya, they are enslaved for the dunya. So whatever you give them money, they will be enslaved to that. They want